What is up? What's going on, guys? Trizzle here, tuning in, bringing you guys another great 3-star tutorial. Today, we are going to be going over an 8Q charge LaLoon. Of course, this is at Town Hall 9 level, one of the strongest versions of LaLoon that you can actually perform. A few things you have to get done, but I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting with the army breakdown, there will be some variability depending on your ability to plan for the base, what type of cleanup you need. But what we have here, of course, is what I call the standard version. Like I said, you can actually toggle in some troops in and out for cleanup, and I will label that accordingly. But starting with the army, you're going to have 6 Wallbreakers, 14 balloons, 2 wizards, 4 healers, 1 baby dragon, 2 minions, 2 Lava Hounds, and of course 1 Max Clan Castle Hound. That's going to bring us to the spells. The spells are pretty much locked and loaded. You can maybe swap out one of the rages, but what I found is that running 3 rage spells, 3 haste spells, and 1 poison spell is what's more than likely ideal for most bases. Again, for extra cleanup, you can adjust the cleanup troops as needed. Now, with tips for success, the goal of the Queen Walk is to take out the Archer Queen, the CC troops, and at least 1 air defense. You have to accomplish that. The LaLoon portion needs to start by 1:30 left in the raid. If you go past that, you definitely run the risk of running out of time. The 3-star max bases in war, consistently, your Archer Queen needs to be at least 20 plus, and your Barbarian King needs to be as strong as possible, just to be able to, tank or take out as many structures, without dying too soon. Now, you always want to raid your queen and healers. If your Archer Queen is targeted by the xbows, more than 2 defenses, defensive heroes, and most CC defensive troops. Of course, practice, memorize those raid objectives, and practice some more, guys. Very important. Now let's go ahead and get right into the raid objectives, starting with raid objective number 1. Now you want to determine the best side of the base to attack. You need to be able to take out at least the Archer Queen, at least 1 air defense, the CC troops during your charge. And of course, if there is a Lava Hound in the CC, for example, if you're in war and you know that ahead of time, if it's offset, you can sometimes ignore it. But generally speaking, if you don't know what's in there, you got to take it out. Raid objective number 2. Drop the Archer Queen, followed by the 4 healers to target her. Raid objective number 3. Use the baby dragon or a wizard to make sure that she goes in the correct direction. And remember, this is more of a charge, guys, not a walk. Raid objective number 4. Rage the queen as needed, your queen healers. Always remember, the rage is needed for the xbows, 2 or more defenses, defensive heroes, and most CC troops. Number 5. Allow the queen to establish the direction she's going in, then you can use your king to complete the funnel on the other side. That way you can get her to charge into the base. That's going to get us to number 6, which is Wallbreaker into the base using no more than 3 Wallbreakers. And usually if you can get your rages down correctly, you can get away with 2 Wallbreakers if they're raged. Number 7. Make sure your queen stays alive. Now, probably the most important thing, because if she dies and you don't have those objectives completed, you're gonna fail. So make sure your queen stays alive. Don't forget to use your rages when needed, and be aggressive. Number 8, poison your CC troops as needed. Number 9, use the remaining Wallbreakers to break the Archer Queen further into the base to make sure you achieve taking out the Archer Queen, air defense, CC troops, and as many other air targeting defenses as possible. Number 10, be mindful of the time, guys. Your Lalo must begin by 1:30, or you will fail due to time. Number 11, try to come from behind the sweeper with your Lalo. Your Lalo is going to start adjacent to where the Archer Queen took out the chunk of the base. Basically, where she had worked her way into taking out the defenses. You always want to target the first air defense, deploying the hounds in a wide V to soak up those traps, then bring in targeted 2 loons per defense in a circular manner, starting at the beginning of the wedge. The goal is to use about 6 to 8 loons and allow the base to be taken out in sections. Raid objective number 13. Use 1 to 2 haste spells to bring the loons into the base. Number 14. After the air defense goes down, deploy the last hound and the targeted loon pairs to target the next air defense. Try to save 1 or 2 loons if you can to help with cleanup. Number 15. Haste as needed to ensure good loon pathing and destroy the xbows and air defense as soon as possible. And then finally, number 16. Deploy those cleanup troops as soon as possible. Time should always be considered, since the charge portion of the raid can take up a little bit of time, so make sure you get those cleanup troops down as soon as you can. Don't forget, guys, when you're scouting, your starting point for the charge and where the Archer Queen enters the base, make sure that the air defense can't snipe your healers. If you lose your healers, you'll probably end up losing, the firepower you need to charge the Archer Queen into the base. And then, of course, make sure you use the ability, worst case scenario, to keep her alive. Sometimes, depending on how the charge plays out, you might have to use the Queen ability to keep her alive. And if that's the case, guys, keep her alive. Doesn't matter. It's better to have an alive Queen with no ability than to let her die. Alright, so with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into the replays and show you the actual raid in action. So of course, we're going to come in with the Queen, followed by the 4 healers, get the baby dragon down to start the funnel, and then from there, you're just going to be somewhat patient, allow the Queen to take out the defenses, and then got to get those raid objectives completed as far as taking out air defense, Queen, and the CC troops. Alright, don't forget, if the Queen does get targeted by more than 2 defenses, you've got to use that raid spell, because she is going to need that boost from the healers. From there, you're just going to allow the Queen to process the defenses, and then you're going to determine where you're going to end up using your king. So, end up wall breakering into the base. Go ahead and rage the Queen, so that way she can take out the defensive Queen along with the xbows. And I did kind of make a little mistake here on my wall breakering, but I was still able to get the job done. Drop the king on the other side, so that way the Queen can at least start working her way into the core a little bit and take out that other air defense, as well as anything else that might be in the middle. Alright, so let's go ahead and speed this up. You'll notice as a minute 30 is left on the clock, that's when you gotta try to get your Lalo down. I try to make sure that I get at least 1 to 2 air defenses on the Queen charge if possible, but sometimes you don't need to. So again, starting with the LaLoon portion, 2 hounds on that first air defense, followed by the loons. Bring your haste in as needed. I was able to conserve a rage on this particular raid, so I was able to use that over the core. And then, of course, using the last CC hound, you bring that in on the last air defense, and then loons as needed, haste spells to get the most out of your loons, and then sayonara base. I didn't realize that the Teslas on this base weren't max as I was doing the prep for this video. So my apologies, guys. I usually like to show you only max base content, but it was still a 3-star, and I don't know who tells people to keep running this base, but I swear I've seen this base more than I'd like to admit. It's an internet base. I think it's called a Taylor, but for some reason people love it, and you're gonna have to learn how to 3-star. So pretty simple, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and watch the next example. Alright, so this is more of another trophy base. You may not see this rain too much in wars anymore, but it's one of those things where it's always good to have an example of how to approach as many bases as possible. When you're coming in, you want to be mindful of how the funnel. Try to figure out the pathing on the Queen, so that way you can know ahead of time where you're going to drop your baby dragon and the general direction you want your Queen to travel. So once you get the Queen down, get the 4 healers up behind her, you're going to want to make sure that you're trying to get in to get the air defense down, get the queen down, get the clan castle troops down as soon as possible, so that way you can get your LaLoon down and get your 3-star. Alright, so with this one, because I was able to take out the right-hand corner of the base, I used the rage spells as needed, brought the king down on the bottom to get that funnel set nice and tight, and then Queen ends up taking out the Lava Hound, comes out of the clan castle, and then from there she takes out the air defense, air sweeper, and then we start the LaLoon. Alright, so let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Of course, drop the poison spell to help the queen assist in the pups. She takes out the wizard tower, mortar, other wizard tower, rage spell, takes out the air sweeper, then the air defense, and then it's sayonara. Again, guys, 2 hounds per air defense as you're coming in with your Lalo, followed by the targeted loons, 2 loons per defense. Because the air defense was so close, and because I'd made so much progress on this with the queen charge, I went ahead and brought in the last hound a little bit earlier than I would normally do it, because I like to get that nice circular pathing with the loons. But as you can see, this base got wrecked. So with the queen being up, healer still keeping her fully charged, by the end of the raid, there's not a whole lot that the base can do, because you'll end up having so many loons. I found that more often than not, the hounds don't even pop, which you really do need at least 1 or 2 hounds to pop, so that's not always a good thing. But that's why you want to make sure you get your LaLoon started by 1:30 left in the raid, and that's why you want to get those cleanup troops down as soon as possible. A lot of people will actually deploy their minions after they deploy the Lalo. That way, with the Lava Hound tanking for the loons coming in, taking out the defenses behind it, there's nothing that would target the minions, so therefore they kind of have free reign, and it allows you to start that cleanup process that much quicker. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the next example, which this is more of a war base centered CC, so we'll be able to get a better representation of how to take out a semi-decent base in Clan Wars. Alright, so again, you're going to determine which side you're going to come in. Coming in from the top hand, I would say 11 o'clock section of the base, because we're trying to get in there, take out that archer queen as well as the air defense. That's where we want to bring the charge in. We're going to try to keep the queen alive at all costs, rage her in. There was a giant bomb there on the edge, so didn't send the Wallbreakers in right away, but the Wallbreakers should be coming pretty soon so we can get the queen into that compartment. Now that that's established, the queen is able to, under rage, drop the poison spell to help take out the archer queen, deal with the skellies that pop out, and then from there she's able to take out the air defense, the wizard tower. I think she comes over to the expo as well, and then it's just wreck face, because again, once you're able to achieve taking out those high value defenses from an air standpoint, the base just crumbles. So you'll notice that I didn't even deploy the king yet, because the funnel was pretty effective at the beginning of the raid. I used 2 hounds on that first air defense, followed by the targeted loons, allow the first portion of the Lalo to process that section of the base, and you come in with the last hound, followed by the targeted loons, and then by the end of it, there's just so much left standing. Obviously the queen's alive, king's basically full health, and there's almost every loon that I dropped is still alive. So the key to this raid, guys, is making sure you've got the required tools to be able to execute it. If you don't have an upgraded queen, it's going to be very difficult. I would say that you can pull it off with a slightly lower queen, maybe 15, 16, 17, 18, but it's still going to be a lot harder than it should be. So it's so important that you work on getting the required elements to execute this raid. Alright, so should have just 2 more examples for you guys, but it's still very, very good to watch and get this stuff practice, because if you can master this raid, there really wouldn't be a whole lot of bases between a couple of the other attacks that I've showcased on the channel that will allow you to really be a boss at Town Hall 9, which is probably one of the most fun town halls in the entire game. So love these the variability. Love the fact that, you know, between LaLoon, between ground attacks, hogs, Valks, there's so much that you can use to 3-star, and it just makes the game that much more enjoyable. So made a little bit of mistake here with my Wallbreaker. I was trying to get the queen in to that compartment to take out that X-bow, but nonetheless, she's still able to work her way around, rage her up, takes out the X-bow. From there, you start the Lalo, making sure that you don't get past a minute 30 left on the clock. 2 hounds on that first air defense, targeted loons, using your haste spells to get in there. Use the last hound on the last air defense, and then by the end of it, the queen's usually still alive with the healers keeping her up. Of course, you'll still have a big pack of loons. You just want to get the cleanup troops down as quickly as possible. Now, of course, if you are able to save one of those loons, it actually does make quite a bit of difference for cleanup. Obviously, the loons are a defense targeting troop, so you won't be able to drop it till all the defensive structures have been cleared on the board, but it still helps, you know, being able to take out a straggler, you know, structure or building and get the 3 stars. The biggest element I would say to this raid, other than having an upgraded queen, of course, you want to make sure you know how to Lalo. I wouldn't start with this as the first raid to learn LaLoon. I would typically start off with, you know, like a Penta LaLoon, maybe a Quad LaLoon, a Quattro LaLoon, and then from there, once you master the feel of the execution, then you can branch off into the hybrid attacks. And by that point in the game, you should have your queen well upgraded to the point where, you know, granted I don't have a max queen on this account yet, but, you know, this is my 3rd account. I can tell you that even at level 28, she's still able to, you know, be very, very effective. I've been able to take out some weak Town Hall 10s. Also, I would say 9.5 bases that have Town Hall 10 level defenses without the Infernos. So still a lot more DPS than your standard Town Hall 9. So let's go ahead and watch the very last attack I want to show you guys. Again, want to make sure that you're going for the Holy Trinity, which is going to be taking out the Archer Queen, air defense, and the CC troops for pretty much any and all air raids if possible. By achieving those elements, it gives you the advantage so that once you actually deploy the hybrid portion of the second part of your army, it's just so effective, guys. Don't forget, you got to keep that queen alive, so rage her up as needed. When you're taking out higher heroes, especially a king, he can actually, you know, take her out if you're not careful. So you also want to rage your, you know, healers and queen if they do come in contact with, you know, a high level king, and definitely a, you know, a high level queen. So queen ends up going around in a slightly different direction. Luckily, the clan castle didn't really have anything in there. So as she circles around, I went ahead and decided to break her into this portion of the base, being that the queen is down on the far side. And then by her coming around, we're going to be able to take out, you know, quite a bit of stuff here in this section of the base. Wallbreaker her in, and here she goes. King goes in. He's able to aggro on the queen. Goes in, knocks her out. Queen takes out the air defense, moves up, takes out the wizard tower, followed by the X-bow. And then from there, guys, it's sayonara. Being that I was running out of time, I knew the heroes would do their thing. I went ahead and started the Lalo at the top of the base. 2 hounds on that first air defense, followed by your targeted loons. 2 loons per defenses. Haste as needed. Bring those loons over the defenses. And then sometimes you can get that 3rd spell slot to either rage, use the rage for your air portion of the troops of the army, or if you need it to help the queen on her charge, it's usually going to help you out one way or another. There are different variations to this particular, not just the raid, but also the army, and I will actually be showcasing that. In fact, this is going to be part 1 of the queen charge LaLoon section, because we're going to be getting into TDH, a couple of different versions where you also even run less hounds. So very important, very strong attacks, stuff that you guys definitely want to learn. Alright, so that is going to wrap it up for this version of this army. Like I said, I'm actually gonna probably end up doing a part 2 and possibly a part 3 of the Queen Charge / Queen Walk army, but that's just because there's so much strength in the Queen Healer combo that it gives you the ability to really, change things out, tailor it as needed, and just makes the game that much more fun, being that, you can use this along with probably 10, 15 other armies to 3-star Town Hall 9. It just makes it that much more exciting. So with that all being said, guys, I really appreciate you guys watching. As you know, I put a lot of time, energy, and effort into putting together these guides for you guys because I want to spread that knowledge. I want to help you 3-star. I want to make you the best possible clasher that you can be. Alright, so don't forget, we are running a gift card contest. Right now, we are in April 2018. So if you want a chance to win, you got to post in the comments. You got to be a subscriber, like the video. April 2018 gift card contest. And without further ado, Trizzle's going to call it a day. Really appreciate you guys watching. Trizzle tuning out.